Hello and welcome to episode 11, your go-to gear of the 1/160 of the second photography podcast. Today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ben again. And Ben, would you just like to quickly introduce yourself for those listeners who haven't heard one of your previous episodes?
Hello, my name is Ben. I'm a photographer and videographer, and I've been doing that for around 10 years now. And in my spare time, I'm also a keen photo editor.
Thanks, Ben. So today we're talking about your go-to gear, and some time ago I did say I would bring along my new camera and we could have a talk about that, so I'm going to now unveil it. For suspense reasons, I've not let Ben see this new camera.
Oh, it's exciting.
But I'm going to let him see it today, so he hasn't seen it. You at home can't see it because this is a podcast, but I'm going to get it out and I'm going to hand it to Ben. There you go, Ben. And Ben, I just want you to describe it to the listeners, please. And Ben, don't hold back with your feelings on it. Just tell it how it is.
It looks it looks quite retro. It's certainly got the old Cybershot feel and look to it. I've not actually seen one of these before. Let's turn it on. Oh. Wow, that's when did this come out?
So this camera was released, I think, in 2003. So it's 15 years old. It's a Minolta D-Marge 7i. I don't know if I is important compared to just the 7.
It is a stunning 5 megapixels.
5 megapixels, yes, that's correct.
It's not obviously, now looking at it with what we use today, it is quite dated, but I do like the look of it. It's got a very I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of like an old low-tech feel to it, which I like. Quite stark colours and sharp angles.
Yeah, it's quite ugly, I would say.
Well, there's beauty in ugliness. I think at the time this would have been a great little camera. Unfortunately now, though, as I said, it is quite dated, but I think for a starter camera for someone it'd be good. And it does have a screen on the back, which is very useful. Yeah.
Thank you. See, this I paid 20 quid for this on eBay. I think even delivery was like £4, so I didn't pay too much, but it goes from 28mm to 200mm, so it's a really versatile lens. It's got macro capabilities. It's got an EVF. Can you believe in 2003 you can have an EVF? And amazingly, it switches when you put your eye to it, like modern cameras do. It shoots RAW. We can see histogram details in it. We've got full manual control, although actually setting things can be quite a challenge. We've got a top LCD plate. We've got an onboard flash, quite a chunky grip. It does take video, but I really wouldn't bother. It's got autofocus. So I'm in aperture priority at the moment. I would call this an ISO 100 camera. You would not really go above 100 on this. You get terrible images, but you get quite good images. And the reason I bought it was because it's quite a small lightweight camera and it can go up to 200. This is quite a good sort of carry round camera. I'm not going to be too worried about it getting stolen. No one's going to steal this. I'm not too worried about it getting damaged, but it does make a camera that would cover this range would be quite expensive now, and for 20 quid I don't mind taking a punt and giving it a go. But yeah, I'm quite happy with it. The other good thing,
£20, it's not bad, is it?
The other good thing for travel, let's just turn it off, is it runs off 4 AA batteries. I put 4 rechargeables in there, so I can always get some batteries for it if I take it out on my travels. So I think really the point of bringing this today is to sort of talk about, I've talked about the features of this camera, and we often talk about features and where features can get us. But it's quite surprising that a camera from 2003 has features you would expect on today's cameras.
Definitely.
And features that have only just come out on some cameras, like an EVF, good access to rechargeable batteries, shooting RAW, a good focal range. It's got a lens hood. It starts at 2.8 and goes to 3.5 for its aperture. It's not. I don't think it's a big sensor, but it can still let in quite a lot of light. So this works with Lightroom. It's compatible with Lightroom because I've put some images in there. They're not the best of images, but most likely travel photos are just going to end up on the web. So it doesn't really matter too much. So that was quite... Anything you want to say before I put that down?
I think with the battery situation, it's very good. Obviously, modern cameras don't really run on AA's. I've got a battery grip with where you can put AA's in it, but not everyone has one of those. And if you haven't got your Canon battery charger and access to a plug socket, and you run out of batteries, then you could be in trouble. But AA's, you can just get those. You can get a pack of 20 at Poundland, and it'll get you through the day if needs be.
Yeah, and unless
other discount shops are available.
Thank you for putting that in. For our non-UK listeners, Poundland is a shop where everything is £1, although sometimes it's not, strangely, in Poundland.
£4 or £5, which is false advertising.
Yeah, I'm always shocked when I go in there and there's something that isn't £1. The other good thing about it, well, the other thing about charging is now some cameras will charge off USB, which means you can take those massive USB bricks with you.
Yeah.
Which is quite good. But yeah, nothing beats 4AA. So I brought that along just to talk about gear, really. And it's interesting because I have cameras and lenses for certain scenarios. This will be something I would take on my holiday. And I'm not going to take a big DSLR on holiday with 6 lenses. I'm going to take one camera that has a good zoom range, can cover all eventualities, and is quite lightweight. With that in mind, Ben, what gear do you use all the time?
You definitely use all the time. It's now my graphics tablet and laptop. I only got my graphics tablet in summer of last year, and it's been just a complete game changer. Made things so much easier, and I feel I'm doing the best work I've ever done with it. In terms of like camera equipment, the cameras do change from time to time, but the one lens, like I said in the previous one I've got, is 15 to 85mm, which I'll use that all the time. That is a great lens. I love it.
Last time we spoke about that, when I went home, I looked up the cost of that. It's a really expensive lens.
Yeah, I'll just get it.
I think when I looked on Amazon, it's about £600. Let's have a look at this. So it's quite a heft. So Ben's handed it to me. I've never used this or seen it before, so it's quite a hefty lens. It's 72mm thread at the front. I would say it's not plasticky, but it's not all metal, is it? It's a bit of a mix there. And you've got just check them on the right setting. Quite a smooth zoom range. It's nice that it's got a scale on. And does it have full-time manual focusing?
Yeah.
So what I can do without breaking Ben's lens is it's on autofocus, but I can still do some manual focus. I see it's got macro. How good's the macro?
It's all right. I don't use it for that though. I've got a macro lens. Before
macro, the closest focus is 0.6 meters. So I wouldn't have thought you'd be getting hugely close on this. Well, that's a nice lens. Yeah, I suppose, and this covers quite a big focal range, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So on an APS-C, that's going to be approximately 24 to 105-ish, 24 to 130-ish with the crop factor and APS-C. Yeah, lovely. I'm going to hand that back now to Ben.
Cool.
He's going to put it away rather than me drop it. So that's your go-to photography lens, and what camera is that on?
That is on Well, the one I have here is 600D. It was used quite extensively on a 7D as well.
Has a 600D got a flip out screen?
It does indeed, yes.
Oh,
That's
lucky there.
very...
Yeah, that's really good.
when you're getting very low angle shots, that's a lifesaver.
Is that a touch screen?
No, it's not.
Okay. Yeah, flip out screen is very good. So that's your sort of go-to, and that covers most of your work, does it?
Yeah, well, that the 85 lens, the 50mm I've got on, and I've got, like I said, I've got macro in there as well. And like we mentioned last time, my least used lens is this big one, this 300.
Okay. Right, so we've got the 70 to 300. It's got 2 stabilising modes. What's the difference, Ben?
Just extra sensitivity at long range.
And this does macro at 1.5 metres.
I wouldn't class 1.5 meters
No,
as macro.
I wouldn't either. Ah, lovely. Oh, and it's got a lock. Do you get much lens creep on these lenses?
I've not found that I do, no. But as I said, this one is my least used lens, so hopefully soon, like when I move, I'm going to be utilising it a bit more, maybe for wildlife stuff, so we'll find out then. After it's set up for a while.
Oh, that's good. So, are there any combination of that kit that you use for a specific task? Or was there times when you use certain kit over another?
Well, with the certain things like product photography, I generally use the macro lens. The stuff I've done is some example is like some beard oils. So I want to get nice and close in the bottle, get all the details, and get a nice golden glow coming through the liquid inside. So the macro for that, definitely. But portrait or just general people is usually the 50 or the 85mm.
Yeah, I think I've got kit that I use for different scenarios. So for portrait, I'll use my 5D and I'll use an 85mm lens. Or if I know it's going to be more environmental portrait, I'll probably use a 50mm. And I've recently invested in a 200mm, which sadly I've not had chance to use properly because it's so... Using it indoors is incredibly restrictive.
Yeah.
Because you can't back up enough. But when I do sort of street or travel photography, or we go out as a family and I take a camera with me, there's no way I'm going to be taking out a DSLR with a big lens on. So, I mean, I mainly have primes, so there's no way the flexibility, you don't have a great deal of flexibility with primes. So I wouldn't want to take a DSLR and 3 lenses out. So I generally take a Fuji X100 out, or maybe even a compact camera. So for me, it does depend on the sort of scenario. The DSLR is so versatile that it's brilliant, but the downside of it is just the weight.
Yeah.
The weight is so big.
The weight and all the peripherals.
Let's talk about your gear that never lets you down or has rarely let you down. Have you got any gear that you know just isn't going to let you down in a certain scenario?
I think definitely the laptop and my graphics tablet. Obviously laptops can break down. Thankfully, touch wood, I've not had any problems with it yet. Nothing's ever really let me down. I did buy some batteries off eBay. I think they were dodgy because they hold charge for maybe 10 minutes and take 5 hours to charge, so that's only really been the thing that's let me down, but then that was because I was just wanting to get some cheap batteries.
I've never really had anything let me down. I've never even had a memory card fail. I know I will at some point. I know I will have a memory card fail, but I've never had anything like that. But the only thing I found quite annoying is I did a shoot with my Fuji and I wanted to do a flash with it, and the flash packed up because it was a small flash. It used AAA batteries, so I didn't get many shots with that, which was really annoying. Whereas I knew if I took my DSLR and the DSLR flash, I wouldn't have had that problem.
Yeah,
it would have worked and it would have been really reliable. So I think camera wise, I know my DSLR won't let me down. I know the batteries will last a long time, and I know I can operate it really quickly due to all the controls on the outside. And I'm well practiced with it, so I'm really confident with that. And in terms of flash, the bigger the flash, for me, the less likely it is to let me down. And so that's quite. I think I learnt a lesson that day about what to sort of take. It was an important shoot for me, so I should have really taken the DSLR and just hulked it about.
Yeah, camera equipment doesn't seem to have the, should we say, planned obsolescence as other tech. You get a camera, if you keep it in the right condition, it will last you a lifetime. And yeah, better versions will be released, but cameras don't really degrade in the way like, say, mobile phones do, or games consoles or laptops. It's just come out that Apple have been intentionally slowing down older model iPhones to make you upgrade for the new ones, so you don't get that with cameras, which is a good thing.
No, the lens is the key thing, really. Unless, our television soon switch to 8K and everyone needs 8K imagery, I think most cameras are going to do fine. Most of the stuff is consumed on the web.
Yeah.
Most people's monitors are HD, if that. So yeah, stuff taken on mobile phones is suitable. Video taken on mobile phones is suitable. It's going to be very unlikely that you're going to need to up the quality, really. I completely agree with that. So if you had to pick your top 3 bits of gear, what would you pick?
Top 3?
I suppose you've got to include the camera in that.
I would include a camera with the 85mm lens, personally. The camera, interchangeable really, but as long as it's a camera that fits. My laptop, because obviously I need that for editing photos, and can I bundle memory card in with the camera?
I'm not going to too strictly hold you to your 3 items, so that's fine.
Obviously you need memory card for using the camera, but I use them as mini hard drives as well, so all my photography projects I keep on separate SD cards, so I don't have to keep getting the hard drive out. As well as that, I would say my graphics tablet. I don't think I could go back to editing with a mouse after using that now.
Speaking of the graphics tablet, I'm left-handed, but I use a mouse in my right hand because every time I've sat down on a computer over my lifetime, it's always on the right. So I have a graphics tablet, so I can edit with the pen in my left hand and the mouse in my right hand and go quite quickly like that. So all I have to do is just move the pen off the tablet, and it doesn't interfere with the mouse then, which is quite good. I think my top 3 would be Canon 5D, the Canon 85mm f1.8 lens, and Lightroom. The reason being, I use Lightroom for all my editing. I don't really do that much Photoshop, even for portraits. I tend to do most of it in Lightroom, and I find Lightroom incredibly powerful. And in another episode of this podcast, we will probably talk about Lightroom extensively. But I find Lightroom really powerful, and I find most of my images get edited to some degree, even if it's just looking at the black and white. So Lightroom is quite key, and I say Lightroom is almost as key as a camera. But within Lightroom, you can look at the picture breakdown by lenses.
Yeah.
And when I've done that, the vast majority of my pictures have been taken on the 5D, and the vast majority of those pictures have been taken with the 85mm lens. That tends to be my go-to lens because I tend to do a lot of portrait work. So those 3 things would have to be my top 2 go-to gears, really, that I use all the time. And I rely on. So we've talked about your go-to gear. Do check us out on Facebook. Remember, this podcast can be found on iTunes if you listen to your podcast that way. And join us for episode 12, Realising Your Image Ideas. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.